Now that I work in a startup, it's time to invest way more heavily than sneakers than heels. Definitely. Ah, yes, startup life. Forget about these. Yo, it is. Welcome to today. I will be breaking down why I chose to work in a startup and leave corporate. But before we get into it, my name is Celestine and I make videos related to tech, career and the lifestyle of a 20-something living in Cape Town with her beloved border collie. So if that interests you, smack that like button and subscribe. Anyway, let's get into the video. Let's break down the myth of startups. You have the people in jeans and sneakers. You have the people who are just working all the time and barely getting paid, or getting paid exorbitant amounts of money. Or you have all these other ideas that permeate startup culture. It is not a bunch of tech bros walking around playing video games instead of working. No. Working in a startup means that you are really stretched to full capacity, whereas in a corporate environment you might have delegated teams and structures and processes that are already well defined and quite a hierarchical or organizational organization. We in a startup is normally more flat, meaning that there's a lot more room for you to be stretched and experience growth. Okay, there's still a large volume of work to be done, obviously, depending on whether you are doing pre or post market fit of your product. And yeah, so in a startup, there's a lot less room for you to, I don't want to use the word hide, but that's the best analogy I can give. You are really pushed to the full potential. That's my dog. You are really pushed to the full potential of your capacity and capabilities. The payoff is that you get to learn a lot of things and leverage on your pre-existing skills and knowledge in amazing ways. I find that with there being fewer staff, there is greater room for connection also across the teams, which is quite important to me. And because it's a small organization with relatively fewer people, most of the people will know each other's names, which is always a nice thing. Okay, moving on to corporate. My experience anyway is that there's a lot of processes and well-defined structures and things like that, which is obviously awesome if you like that, and it's a much greater deal of direction and clarity than you would typically experience within a startup, which can change day by day or depending on the business-led directives or things like that. So that's always a nice thing. Within a corporate, there's much more delegation of work across teams, and you can really hone in on specific skills. So if you really wanted to specialize and only do one type of thing, or really stick to one type of thing mainly, for example, if you wanted to do data science, it would be highly unlikely if you were in corporate that you would then also have to do like data engineering and analytics, and then also do the presentation of the data, because you would most likely be really focusing on your very specific skill and then only contributing to the success of other members of your team who are in those roles. Okay? But it wouldn't be your primary function. Whereas if you were in a startup, you might end up having to fulfill multiple roles. So it really depends on where you are. Within a corporate, there could also be well-defined career ladders or career or rising to the top of that career. Whereas in a startup, you might be less sure or less certain of where your growth could be, and it could be a lot more variable. Okay. One of the best things about working in corporate though is that people will recognize the name of the company you work for, and you can have a really awesome team socials as there are so many people there, and the wealth of knowledge created by the sheer force of will in documentation, particularly if you're in IT, is phenomenal. So there are some really intense benefits. Some of the pros of working at a startup in terms of career trajectory is that change can be somewhat slower at a corporate. Like, you have to run through the moles, and it can be a lot of weighed down by bureaucracy or administrative capacity, which can be very frustrating. This isn't necessarily a bad thing. It depends on you, your personality, and your ultimate goals. If you have the goal of advancing quickly through your career or through the rungs of career, then a startup might be a better option for you. If, on the other hand, you want to have really awesome perks, great benefits like health insurance and a pension fund, and all these like great HR team already set up and things like that, then you might want to consider going to ye old corporate. It all depends on where you are. Other things is, like in a startup, you will also have to be thinking on the feet and laying down the strategy and really going really deep into those thinking plans and thinking out, where could this go, and developing stuff from scratch. And a lot of processes you'll be defining as you go, and you will be working almost as if in the trenches. It's kind of like the wild, wild west out here. Whereas in a corporate, these things are pretty much defined for you by higher ups, and things are very process driven and streamlined. You can almost think of it as quite clinical, or I like to compare it to working in a bank. It would be the two extremes. Obviously, within both sets, things can vary differently and wildly on each side. We've all heard about these crazy startup things, and also the glamorization of startups within the past few years by the media. That's why we have, I can't remember the name of it now, but that's why we have issues within startups where they go bust. That is a very serious side effect of what could happen if you work for one, whereas corporates tend to be more stable. However, we all know that giants like Topshop, etc. have closed. In terms of my personal goals, I'm not going to lie to anyone. I used to work full-time at an office within a corporate, and I will not be doing that anymore. I pretty much refuse to work full-time in an office, especially after surviving a global historical event that's ongoing. I don't see the point within my IT industry, and of working in an office again, and no amount of 40-year-olds saying that they feel reinvigorated and refreshed is going to change my Gen Z mind. I like being at home, and I choose to work at home, and I'm very happy that I chose to work at a startup where I get to work at home 3 days out of the week. It's better. Also, startup, the one I work for, has a much more diverse management structure and general staff competency, and that was very important to me. Obviously, they also gave me a MacBook Pro, which is just awesome. But I'm living the Starbucks dream life that I wanted to, so there is no wrong or right choice. I wanted a nicer life, and that's what I chose. But obviously, corporate could be a better decision if you were trying to get a household name onto your CV. For example, having PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC on your house, or PwC on your CV, or like KPMG or Standard Bank or something like that, or Visa, would be hugely influential, whereas smaller names could be a bit more, not have as much of an impact, but you might have serious growth in there, so it depends. So it's all dependent on you, and I suppose the outcome of this is, on the one hand, working from home is the way of the future, and I will not diverge on that, but there is no one way to be happy, and everyone should choose what is best for them. I discovered my best co-worker is my dog. You choose what's best for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.